So it's late at night and you're watching some House MD and then all of a sudden you see this.
Which means we're gonna have to remove your whole head. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt. Hallucination. That's a brain thing, right?
You start thinking to yourself, huh, that was a little weird. That was a little kooky. That was a little bizarre. That was a little surreal. If you know me or have been following my channel for a while, you probably know that I'm a big fan of Surrealism. I've made videos covering Surrealist directors and films, and even my favorite movie of all time is a Surrealist movie. But why do I love Surrealist movies so much? Well, I could be lazy and say that it's just personal taste. However, for this video, I want to see if I can put into words why I'm a big fan of this subgenre. What makes Surrealist films so great? In order to answer that vague question, let's start with the beginning of the movement itself. Surrealism began as an art movement in the 1920s founded by André Breton. In 1924, André Breton wrote the Manifesto of Surrealism and would later write a follow-up in 1930. The purpose of this art movement would be, in André Breton's own words, psychic automatism in its pure state. Now, you might ask yourself, why? What is André Breton's point with this? What the fuck is he even talking about? Well, during the time this movement began in France, there was a little historical event that happened. I don't know, it was called World War I or something. Needless to say, this was a terrifying time for the French people, so Surrealism proposed a rejection to this horrific reality. It allowed artists this freedom to express the vastness of the human mind without concern for whether or not it made any sense. It wasn't a way for artists to escape reality, it was a way for artists to break reality. Of course, the first medium that Surrealism caught on in was painting. Artists like Salvador Dali, René Magritte, Max Ernst, and Frida Kahlo were all heavily inspired by Surrealism in their works. It's through these paintings where you get to see what differentiates Surrealism from other genres. Some people can often confuse anything that's fantasy or avant-garde as being Surrealist, but there is a notable difference between the genres. In fantasy, artists are often creating whole new worlds and creatures and stuff like that. Surrealism, as I stated earlier, is a breaking of reality. These paintings have things we recognize, clocks, boats, people. However, they're painted in a way that feels uncanny and almost unrecognizable. Although Surrealist works can create creatures and worlds, fantasy works often try to explain the rules of the creatures and the worlds they create. Surrealism doesn't concern itself with that, as Surrealism is a free flow of thought and the mind. In the case of avant-garde, most works are a destruction of form and societal norms. Surrealism, on the other hand, does have a form, it's just a distorted form. Now, let's move on to the actual subject of this video, films. With Surrealism growing in popularity in the early 20th century, the movement would eventually make its way to the medium of cinema. Arguably, the two biggest standouts in terms of early Surrealist films were Un Chien Andalou and Meshes of the Afternoon. Un Chien Andalou was a French film from 1929 directed by Luis Buñuel and written by Salvador Dali. The film kinda has a plot, but it doesn't really make any sense and is mostly just a film full of Surrealist ideas and imagery. A hand with ants crawling out of it, a man pulling two pianos with two dead donkeys on them, a man's mouth transforming into armpit hair. God, these are really bad sentences without context. And of course, there's the famous opening scene of this film where a man sharpens a razor blade, the man grabs a woman's face, it cuts to a cloud gliding past the moon, and then we see the woman's eye being sliced. Then there's Meshes of the Afternoon. Released in 1943, this film was directed by Maya Deren and her husband Alexander Hammid. Okay, that is literally Domhnall Gleeson. The film follows a woman stumbling across a strange figure in a shadowy cloak with a mirror for a face. When she goes home, she falls asleep and ends up having dreams of the exact same occurrence over and over again, with things getting more and more bizarre each time. It's through these two films where we get to see two major themes that would go on to define nearly every Surrealist film, exploring nonsensical scenarios with bizarre visuals, and exploring the subconscious mind through dream logic. Let's begin with the first one.
Oh fuck, my dog's testicles!
This is an example of an absurdist joke. There's no actual reason or purpose to this setup or the punchline, instead relying on the absurd and unexpected to get a laugh. Is it a good example? No, it's not. But this type of weird absurdity plays a big part in what makes surrealism so special. Take the work of Czech animator Jan Schwankmeyer, for example. His short films Dimensions of Dialogue and Food follow very simple concepts, communication and food. But the visuals used to communicate those ideas are nothing short of absurd and imaginative. As I showed in my hilarious video of pure comedic gold worthy enough for me to be invited onto Howie Mandel's podcast, this style of absurd surrealism is most often found in the world of comedy.
Lord, what the devil are you doing on that confounded computer tablet device?
Hop to it, man.
Boy.
After 487 seasons, they've still got it.
Just look at Andy Kaufman, Eric Andre, Monty Python, sometimes Looney Tunes, sometimes South Park, and yes, even some internet humor. All of these have surrealist and absurdist styles of comedy, or at the very least borrow from surrealist ideas. Many people can look at this style of humor as nothing more than stupid and lowbrow. And yeah, sure, there are some hippie drug addicts and Beavis and Butthead type adults that just like this brand of surrealism because lol random. However, there is a method to the madness, a method that goes against realism and logic, a method that embraces irrationality rather than rationality. Now let's talk about the second one, exploring the subconscious mind through dream logic. Considering that surrealism is all about breaking reality, it's no surprise that dreams and nightmares would have a huge influence on the movement. I don't usually remember my dreams, but the ones I do have something very in common with each other. Dreams that feel like they take place in reality, but there's always something off. Something that feels unusual and strange, but you accept it as reality when you're in the dream state. Although I can't speak for everyone, I imagine the vast majority of people have dreams that are like that. One dream I remember having when I was a kid is a great example of this idea of dreams bending reality. Everything in the dream felt normal, a normal day with my normal family, doing my normal things. However, everyone, including me, was made of wood. I'm sure there's some weird little witch lady out there that can do a dream analysis and explain what that dream was a metaphor for, but my point is, dreams are weird. This is something that many directors tap into when making surrealist movies, the distorted reality that is so often found in our dreams. Also, just like how dream analysts will examine dreams for hidden meanings, many surrealist films explore themes relating to the human mind and include metaphors embedded in the dreamlike visuals. Which brings me back to the main question that I started this video with: what makes surrealist films so great? It's not just because of the weirdness and the cool dreamlike visuals, it's because of the intimacy. Many surrealist films offer not only an exploration of the character's mind, but also the filmmaker's. And this is where I want to talk about some of the movies that fall under this genre. Not only because it serves as a way for me to recommend some cool as hell movies, but I think it will also highlight what I mean when I talk about the intimacy of surrealism. Despite all of the movies listed being labeled as surrealist, all of the movies are vastly different from each other. One filmmaker could use surrealism in a way that's fun and stylish, and another one might use it to explore depression and the harsh realities of life. One filmmaker could use the genre to satirize our modern culture, and another one might use it as a means of self-reflection. The human psyche of these filmmakers and artists is on full display in these movies, and it's always interesting to see the ways their personalities flourish. Also, this isn't a complete list of every surrealist movie, just the ones I've seen and my personal favorites. David Lynch is a director who constantly dabbled in surrealism to the point where the word Lynchian is sometimes used to describe surreal movies. Eraserhead, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire are the films of his that best fit the surreal genre. David Lynch has a nightmarish approach to his surreal movies with disturbing visuals and bizarre characters. They have plots that may not make sense on a first glance, but have so much to say when you peel back all the layers of weirdness. These films explore themes of sex, violence, and the Hollywood industry. They are definitely worth checking out. These aren't the type of movies you want to watch with your parents, though. Unless your parents are into lesbian sex. Charlie Kaufman is a screenwriter who also dabbles in surrealism quite a bit. Being John Malkovich, Synecdoche, New York, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things are probably his most surreal works. Charlie Kaufman often explores the human condition through his writing, and these three films are no exception. These films are existential, complex, and bizarre, while also having a human warmth to them. Despite how depressing they can often be, they are definitely worth checking out. If you're looking for something a little older, then Swedish filmmaker Ingmar Bergman is definitely one to note. The three surreal films of his are Wild Strawberries, Persona, and Hour of the Wolf. Like Lynch, these films have a distinct nightmarish tone, and like Kaufman, they explore the complexities of the human condition. These three films went on to influence a wide variety of filmmakers and artists to follow, and it isn't difficult to see why. From the moody cinematography to the tour de force performances to the way they often break traditional filmmaking rules. These films are definitely worth watching, especially for aspiring filmmakers. Yorgos Lanthimos is a more recent filmmaker who's made a name for himself in the world of surreal movies. His two most surrealist movies are The Lobster and Poor Things. Many of Lanthimos' filmmaking traits are present in these two films: the colorful wide-angle lenses, the experimental scores, and the deadpan performances from the actors. Both films explore themes of sex, relationships, and the patriarchy. Both are definitely worth watching if you haven't already. House, pronounced Hausu, is a Japanese horror film from 1977. A part of me was hesitant to include it in this video because it's a film that defies categorization, but it has too many surrealist elements for me to ignore. It's a chaotic movie to say the least, often focusing more on style than cheap scares. In fact, this movie is more funny than scary, but that's what I love about it.
Nobody else but me.
The editing is super stylish and the visuals look straight out of a fever dream. It's one of the most bizarre and unique movies you'll ever see. Another film that kinda defies categorization is Pink Floyd's The Wall from 1982. The film is an adaptation of Pink Floyd's prog rock album under the same name, and it's a wild experience. The film often feels like a feature-length music video with many striking and dreamlike visuals to complement the music. The film also blends live action with hand-drawn animation in a unique way, making the experience truly feel like a dive into someone's twisted subconscious. Definitely worth a watch, especially if you're a Pink Floyd fan. The movie Brazil, directed by Terry Gilliam, is one of the more accessible movies of this bunch while still having its fair share of weirdness. The dystopian world this movie creates is truly something to behold, and the movie has a comedic style reminiscent of Monty Python. Which I guess isn't that odd, considering that Terry Gilliam was a member of the Monty Python troupe. It's a film full of ambition, bizarre imagery, and themes concerning the dangers of totalitarianism. Definitely worth a watch, especially for Monty Python fans. Although Akira Kurosawa isn't a surreal director, his movie Dreams from 1990 definitely qualifies as such. The film is essentially an anthology film with 8 distinct segments, each segment showcasing a different dream from Akira Kurosawa. Some of the dreams are beautiful, colorful, and joyful, others are haunting, dark, and traumatic. It's an incredible experience that I'd highly recommend. Like Kurosawa, I wouldn't describe the Coen brothers as being surreal directors, despite the weird offbeat humor that appears in many of their films. However, the one film of theirs that does qualify as surreal is A Serious Man from 2009. The film follows a father named Larry Gopnik experiencing an existential crisis after a bizarre set of circumstances causes him to question his own religion. Despite the depressing subject matter, the film is very much an absurdist comedy. It's, in my opinion, the Coens' most underrated film, and it's one that I definitely recommend watching. Mirror from 1975 is a super unique movie directed by Andrei Tarkovsky. The film is all about a dying man reflecting on his own life, childhood memories, dreams, and the historical events that happened during his lifetime. The film is very autobiographical for Andrei Tarkovsky, and it's also very challenging. The movie makes no effort to hold the viewer's hand. It's a film less concerned with plot and more concerned with giving the viewer a transcendental feeling of life flashing before your eyes. It may not be for everyone, but if you allow the film's hypnotic emotions, philosophies, and poetic imagery to just wash over you, then I think you'll love it. Lastly, I have The Holy Mountain from 1973. I wanted to recommend this movie last because I highly recommend you watch at least 2 or 3 of the movies I mentioned previously before watching this one. Why? Because I have a strong feeling that if this is the first first one of these that you watch, you will probably hate it. This is the most extreme example of a surreal movie that I can think of. It's full of bizarre and sometimes even fucked up imagery. However, the colorful and strange worlds that director Alejandro Jodorowsky creates in this movie is truly something to behold. Despite the extreme weirdness, the film still has fun with itself through the way it satirizes different aspects of modern culture. This is definitely not a movie for everyone, but if you're a fan of this subgenre like I am, then I'd highly recommend it. And I think I'm gonna end things there. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to surreal movies. If you want to learn more about this genre or want even more recommendations, I highly recommend watching these two videos by Screened. Anyways, next video I'm talking about my pet moth named Sam.
You fucker.
Subscribe or something like that. Bye bye.